Hi, I'm Terry Luck, Director of Communications here at Our Lady of Perpetual Help Church in Glenview, and I'm so happy to say, welcome home.
Thank you.
Father Jerry. We're with our pastor, Father Jeremiah Boland, finally home after your sabbatical. Welcome back.
Thank you, Terry. It's great.
Yeah, it's great to see
Great
you.
to be back.
We had a number of fireside chats with different parishioners and staff members, but it's so great to be talking with you again like this.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. I can't tell you how delighted. I took my suitcase and threw it away. No more traveling. So, yeah.
Well, we're going to talk about your sabbatical and all the things you did, but just for viewers, tell us exactly what a sabbatical is.
It's a great question because a lot of people weren't sure what I was doing. You know, some thought I was on an extended vacation, but a sabbatical comes from the word Sabbath, and there's a great biblical tradition of Sabbath. Sabbath means to rest, to recreate, to renew, to praise God in prayer for the gifts that we have been blessed with. And sabbaticals are fairly common in higher education and in ministry, of course, and other professions. Most people don't have the opportunity to go on a sabbatical, so I was greatly blessed. The sabbatical or Sabbath comes from the book of Genesis. On the seventh day, the Lord saw what he had created and saw that it was good, and he rested. You know, even God took a sabbatical. We have a program for priests after several years to spend some time renewing, getting updated in the area of theology, to rest a bit, to have some time for prayer and spiritual development. And so I was granted a sabbatical almost 3 years ago as the result of an evaluation process that I had gone through approaching the end of my first term. And COVID had other plans, so I was delayed 2 years from the sabbatical I was supposed to go on. And then as I was about to go on sabbatical myself, I got COVID. So I was thinking maybe God doesn't want me to go on the sabbatical, but I prevailed. And around the middle of January, I left. What a priest does with a sabbatical is a process of discernment. And I had applied for a grant, and the grant application process forced me to think about, what am I going to do with this 6 months? You know, I came to realize a sabbatical is not something I was owed, not something I deserved, not something that should be given to me, but it was a gift of time. And as I reflected on what I wanted to do for my sabbatical, I realized that in my formation as a priest, one area I've always felt inadequate was the area of biblical study. Mundelein Seminary, when I went there, was a great place, but it had a very weak, in my opinion, biblical program. And so I wanted to really get some solid biblical studies under my belt during the 6 months. And that became the theme out of which I put together the sabbatical, was to enrich myself in terms of the biblical tradition of our church. And once I figured that out, then remarkably everything came in place as I planned the sabbatical and prepared to leave.
So what were some of the insights that you gained through that education process?
So, you know, I lived for the first half of my sabbatical in Rome. There's a program called the Institute of Continuing Education for the Clergy that's in Vatican City with the North American College. I had a room with a little balcony that overlooked the dome of St. Peter's, and just every day you were just conscious of being kind of at the center of Christendom. And as imperfect as the church is, it's a glorious reality to think that on every continent in the world are followers of Jesus Christ. And in this historic center of Catholicism, what a privilege it was to be able to go for a walk, and in 10 minutes you're in the Basilica of St. Peter's or wandering the streets of Rome. A terrific privilege. And the universality of the church. You know, anybody that goes to St. Peter's Square, no matter what time of the day you go, you're just aware of the human community that is claiming Jesus Christ and connected to the Christian church. My sabbatical also took me to many other places in the biblical exploration. I went to Greece and Turkey with the Catholic Theological Union to reflect on the birth of Christianity in the 1st and 2nd century. Asia Minor was the area that the early church experienced explosive growth. And how did that happen? How did that happen? When I went to Egypt and to Jordan, those were places of exploring sites very special to the birth of Judaism and to the birth of Islam, as well as Christian sites. An extraordinary journey to Egypt, and to the ancient civilization of the Egyptian culture. And I then found my way, after reflecting on my biblical family, to visit my biological family in Ireland. A great time. I hadn't seen many of my cousins in 3 years. And then I ended with the parish pilgrimage to Oberammergau. Again, the journey to this passion play that goes back, to the 1300s. It was born out of the bubonic plague, and it's so interesting that the plague of COVID was in the air, affecting this year's production of this historic play. Learned lots of things. Religion matters, faith matters. In this world where we think that religion, in the West we think of religion having died, or the obituaries being written for religion. That would be very confusing to someone in Istanbul or Cairo or Jerusalem, where religious life is flourishing, in the Orthodox, Jewish, and Islamic communities. And so there's a lot that we might learn from how religious thought and tradition can speak to a person in the modern world.
From listening to you, you're surrounded by all the spirituality, all this beauty, and you're walking in the footsteps of Christ, of St. Paul. How does that impact you?
You really see yourself in the much larger context of history. When I was in Jerusalem on Good Friday, and I was joining hundreds of pilgrims doing the way of the cross, and thinking, in the proximate area of the stations of the cross in Jerusalem was where our Lord himself walked. And then I think of the millions and millions of people that have walked those steps, pilgrims from the earliest times of Christianity have followed that journey that brings them ultimately to where tradition says Calvary was, where Jesus was crucified, and then the place where he was buried, the Holy Sepulchre. And you just think, wow. Or to see the place where St. Paul stepped off the boat and touched European soil, the idea of how quickly the Christian gospel moved from Jerusalem to Rome to the whole world. And they're just very poignant, memories. One of the very stirring moments for me was Holy Week in Jerusalem. Holy Thursday, I went to the washing of the feet in the upper room where tradition has that Jesus celebrated the first washing of the feet. The Patriarch of Jerusalem washing the feet of 12 young people that were going to be confirmed, and just thinking, unbelievable that 2,000 years previous this would be in the area that the Lord had the Last Supper, and to be at the Garden of Gethsemane on Holy Thursday evening. On Good Friday, I went to Yad Vashem, which is the Holocaust Memorial in Jerusalem. If that place doesn't move you, then you're just not capable of being moved. It was incredibly powerful. And Holy Saturday, to be in the holy places. And then I had the great privilege, I was with the Franciscans, and they invited me to join them. They're in the basilica at sunrise on Easter morning. And to see the rays of the rising sun basking the Holy Sepulchre in sunlight was just an experience I'll never forget. And then finally on Easter Monday, the gospel on Easter Monday is the journey of the two disciples to Emmaus. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to walk to Emmaus. And it was just 7 miles from Jerusalem. The ancient city of Emmaus has been lost to history, but historians have some ideas where they think. So I went to the one that they most likely think was the historic place where they came to know Jesus and the breaking of the bread. And you just feel this convergence of history, of faith, of conviction, of generations behind me and generations to come will all experience the presence of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's amazing when you tell this, because on one hand it feels like, all this time passed, but with that direct connection, it's like there's no time between. I must feel that way when you're walking in those
Right.
steps.
You feel, going to Israel was sort of feeling like it's sort of like coming home it's like all of us share this common heritage. And then you come to see that not only do the Christians, but Muslims and the Orthodox Jews and everybody feels this is the religious sacred place, the holy place for all of our faith traditions. And you just feel this collective sense that we're all searching, we're all remembering, we're all moving forward, changed as a person of faith.
Well, talking about all these people that coming together, what kind of connections did you make with people from all over the world while you were there?
Yeah, that was one of the highlights of the experience, was just the people I met. When I was in Rome, I was with a group of about 30 priests, most of them from the United States. There were several from other parts of the world. We began this 3-month process. Part of it is prayer, spiritual renewal. Every day we had courses on biblical theology, moral theology, canon law. One day a week, we had this great opportunity of taking tours. Rome, you could go to Rome 100 times, and on the 101st time you'd see something you never saw before. But to have a whole day where we're going to explore Michelangelo's Rome, or the Rome of Bernini, or the Rome of the Roman emperors, and to spend a time with a docent who's an expert on classical Roman history or the art of the Renaissance was just a privilege beyond a privilege. And, after 3 months in Rome, you get to know the city beneath the monuments and the tourist attractions, and just how awesome Roman people are. They've got it right, family, gathering for meals. After dinner, everybody goes on a passeggiato, which is a walk. We used to do that when I was a kid. We'd walk around the block. I couldn't remember the last time I went for a walk after dinner, and that's a part of their ritual. And it's intergenerational. Grandpa and the granddaughter and the grandson and the aunt and the uncle and the cousin. It really made me think of how fractured our world is in our society, where families don't take the time to connect and have a family meal where you put the phone down and you talk to the person on the other side of the table, or just the lovely delight of a wonderful meal. And Italians in some ways are very simple. A meal can just be 4 or 5 ingredients. It doesn't have to be this elaborate production. And I really came to a new appreciation of that. I met unbelievable people when I went into the Middle East, and we all are impacted by the news and sound bites and impressions, and you sit down with. We were visiting with a Nubian family that lived in a village not far from Luxor in Egypt, and we were in their family home, and my culture and this family's culture were about as far apart. Yet, when all was said and done, this mother wants the same thing for her children that a mother in Glenview. You want your children to be safe, to have a chance at life, to make a difference, to be able to share their gifts. All of a sudden, the difference of race, culture, geography fades away to this common human yearning to want to enjoy this life and make sure that my children have the best shot at everything as I did, and I really appreciated that. You know, in the Muslim cultures, you know, you're very struck at the prominence of religious practice. You know, 5 times a day, you know, there's the call to prayer, and people just stop whatever they're doing. Anytime you went into a synagogue or a mosque, you just see people gathered in prayer. You'd walk by a city square and you'd see young people studying the Torah if they were Jewish, or the Holy Quran if they were Islamic. You know, it really made me think that you just got to resist sometimes the stereotypes that plague us as a world, you know. I don't know how many times, particularly when I was in Egypt and Jordan, you know, they always made me feel very welcome. Please tell Americans to come and visit us. We would love for them to see us and to get to know our history and our culture. That's one of the great gifts of traveling. You know, there's that great line from Mark Twain that the greatest force against bigotry is travel. You know, all of a sudden you see a person and you realize, you know, our language might be different, there might be differences about our ways of life, but there's a lot more we share in common than what differentiates us.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about what they asked you specifically was about the Our Lady of Perpetual Help icons. You sent us many videos, yes, and parishioners loved them. Yeah. And I was struck by you would in some of the videos you would find the icon all over your travels.
Veneration of the icon of Our Lady of Perpetual Help is a very popular veneration in the life of the church. I was just astounded how many churches I went to that had a shrine to Our Lady of Perpetual Help. I mean, I stumbled into a church in Dublin, and that's the national shrine for the Irish people to Our Lady of Perpetual Help. I had the great privilege of worshiping in the church where the actual original icon is in Rome. I was in the Coptic Cathedral in Cairo, and one of the prominent shrines to the Blessed Mother was the shrine of Our Lady of Perpetual Help. And when you're gone for 6 months, you can't help from time to time feeling a little homesick. And every time I saw that icon, I would say, "Oh, my parishioners back home," it brought me enormous peace. And I to the point where it would be unusual that I would go to a church that didn't have a shrine to her, and I felt, wow, of all the churches in the patronage of the Blessed Mother, for me on this particular journey, Our Lady of Perpetual Help kept being presented to me in so many places.
That's beautiful. Well, here you are back home. How do you feel like you've been impacted, and how will that impact your ministry going forward?
Thanks, Terry. That's a great question. It's going to take me a while to wrap my head around what has happened to me over the past 6 months. I know I am a different person because of this experience, and I am very blessed because of this experience. And one of the things I must say when being away from OL, when I was with this group of priests from all over the world, we spent a lot of time doing shop talk, and my parish was the largest of the parishes of the particular group I was in, and I was struck. We were all be looking at each other's websites, and it provoked conversations, and just hearing people say, "Wow, your place is unbelievable," and it is unbelievable. I was where 6 months in the big picture is not a long time, but it is in the life cycle of a parish a long time, and I didn't have near the worries that the other pastors had because of the outstanding staff that we have here at Our Lady of Perpetual. I never had any anxieties about people not being cared for or attended to. I look at the lay leadership of this parish. Again, sometimes we just don't realize a lot of parishes, they just struggle to get people to want to be on a parish council or a finance council or a school board or religious ed board or leadership of the men's club, the women's club, and any one of our parishioners would be a star, in these other parishes. And I just was aware of what a blessing that is. On the challenging side, everywhere I went, and I went to a lot of places, I must have gone to 15 or 16 countries in the course of the 6 months, and every place is in a rebuilding mode in light of the pandemic. Every community has suffered significant losses in membership, attendance, financial resources, and it just is key to me that we've got to bring a lot of energy to our efforts to re-invite those that have drifted away and to find new and creative ways to reach out to those who don't understand why you would belong to a church or what's the point of a parish. And when you see the long picture of history and you think of this extraordinary reality called the church, in each generation the church has faced all sorts of calamities and difficulties and crises. But through it all, the proclamation of Jesus Christ has galvanized people to greatness, to generosity. And I just hope that in the coming months we can pray about ways of, we've got a great story to tell here at OL. We've got a great history. We have an enormous wealth of ministries. When I was gone, one of the things I must say that was deeply moving and painful for me was we've had a lot of tragedies in the parish in the last 6 months. And as I've connected with a number of those families, every single person said, if it wasn't for this parish, I don't know how I would have got through it. And then you think about the number of people that don't feel connected to a community of faith, and how do they face illness, unemployment, tragedy, personal issues. When people come together in faith, wow, there's a power there. So I hope as we, begin to look at this crucial next phase of our parish life, bringing people back, dreaming about Renew My Church, thinking about a vital, engaging message to the people of God, that we're just going to together figure this out. We will. Think of our history. We were founded as a small, tiny farming community. We opened our school the year of the Great Depression. We've had obstacles, and the church was founded during the flu epidemic of 1918. So we've faced a lot of stuff in our history. So there's no reason why we can't pull our resources together, think of new ways. One of the things that I would like to really explore with the parish leadership is finding ways to bring people together in small communities. Sometimes the large liturgical experience, people aren't ready for that as step one. Sometimes you have to kind of find a place where they can kind of get a little sense of things, and you build on that. And we're gonna really figure this out, and I can't wait to be part of it.
Yeah, well, that's great. And I'm so happy to have you back. Any final message for parishioners?
Well, we live in a beautiful world, and there's all sorts of beautiful manifestations of God's creation. You don't have to go to Cairo or to Rome. Sometimes you can walk along the shore of Lake Michigan or go to the Cook County bike trail here and just feel the power of God's incredible presence. And I think those kind of experience put things in perspective. And I hope that all of us will continue to appreciate the environment, the world that God has blessed us with, and to be generous in proclaiming those gifts to one another.